Good morning, everyone. This is Carl Nelson. We're going to give it another minute or so before we get going on this, just to let other folks get all logged in and ready to go. So hang in there, and we'll start in about a minute. Thanks. And welcome to the January ALE webinar on what I think is everyone's favorite topic, right? Substantially similar. So we are going to dive into that. Before we get to that, just throwing up contact information for both myself and Susan Kanega, who's also on the webinar this morning, helping out answering questions and asking questions, perhaps. And so if you need to contact us before, during, or after the webinar, that's how to get a hold of us. So just as a general reminder, we do have a website with the webinars listed on it. I'm going to pop over to that page and just let you know that we do post the recordings and the slides, or in some cases a recap, depending on kind of how we're doing it. The slides today, FYI, are going to be pretty short. So we'll get those up within a couple days of the webinar, and so you can see those. You'll note that we don't yet have a February 1 on the calendar. We're working on figuring out what topics we want to do. We have a few ideas. If anyone out there has ideas for topics they'd like us to cover, please let us know, and we will get something on the calendar for February and throughout the rest of the spring as well. At any point, if you have a question about what we're talking about, feel free to put it in the question window, and we will address it as soon as we can. So the agenda today is to review the substantially similar rules and just kind of go through what they actually say. We have a checklist as well, and then we have one of our colleagues from the Auditors office, Dale Sando, who has agreed to join us. And he's going to give his perspective on what the State Auditor's Office saw as they conducted substantially similar audits this past year. So that should be kind of a helpful little perspective there. Okay, so with a couple other things I want to mention. This is one of our FAQs. I threw it into the PowerPoint, and this is basically saying we get this question a lot, like, can you tell me whether a specific thing is or isn't substantially similar? And the answer is we're really here to provide you with an understanding of what the rule is and some tools to let you make the determination, but we're not going to do like an endorsement or a pre-approval or anything like that on a specific item. But we're going to help you kind of walk through what that looks like. So if we get questions today like, is X, Y, and Z substantially similar, I'm probably not going to say yes it is or no it's not. It's just not what we're going to do. And then kind of a corollary to that, there were obviously a number of districts that underwent substantially similar audits in the past year or so, and there are going to be some that undergo those in the next year. And so we're not going to be giving specific advice or guidance on those audits. So if you're in that situation and you have questions, let's go ahead and take that offline. And we're talking kind of forward-looking here, not thinking about an specific audit right now. So enough of the kind of caveats with that. I'm actually going to switch back over to the website and go to the annotated rules. And we're going to start with section 6I. And so this is where the actual substantially similar rule lives. And so I kind of want to unpack this and first start with talking about what it is we're talking about when we're talking about substantially similar. And the first thing is these are things that are purchased or contracted. And there's a couple implications there. So if you're using school district staff, it doesn't fall under substantially similar. And then down here, you'll note that that's kind of highlighted, where it's essentially saying that this is not prohibiting school districts from contracting with district employees to provide any sort of services or experiences. So one of the questions that's come into us over the past couple of years is, well, we have contracts with teachers. So isn't that a contracted service or experience? Well, no, that's an employment contract with a school district employee, and that's not what this is meant to cover. This is meant to cover when you're contracting out with an individual or an organization that's not a normal district employee. It also is not going to prohibit you from contracting with an online provider. And, obviously there are a whole set of rules around online providers. They do have to be approved by OSPI. But if you're using an online provider that's not approved, then you have other problems than just substantially similar at that point. So, the point is, though, that you can buy online courses from an approved online provider. You can contract with an approved online provider, and it doesn't fall under the substantially similar rule. The next kind of key clause here is this one here, the instructional or co-curricular experiences and services that are included in an ALE, written student learning plan, and it does give a few examples: lessons, trips, other activities, and that's kind of a reasonably short list of things here. We have an FAQ farther down on the page that provides some examples, and if you've been doing this for a while, you certainly, I think, know what a lot of these are. So these are things that would fall under the substantially similar rule. We're not saying by providing this list that these are items that are or aren't substantially similar or are or aren't okay to do. This is just examples of things that people have paid for. So music lessons and dance and art, PE, skiing, tennis, golf, driver's ed, astronomy, robotics, needlecraft, field trips to museums or concerts or games or things like that. So those are the sorts of activities that tend to fall under the substantially similar rules. A few other examples, because as I think many of you know, ALE programs are required to report to OSPI each year what they bought. And so we do have some actual information on that, and just thought I'd show this here. In 2011-12, there were 48 districts that sent to OSPI a substantially similar report. Last year, that fell to 38. So I think fewer and fewer districts are doing purchased and contracted ALE experiences. But actual number of things that were bought fell from about 4,500 to about 2,200. And the value, again, it was cut roughly in half, from about $4.6 million to $2.8 million. And then, the other kind of interesting stat that we looked at is there were some school districts that were spending a lot of money, so over $50,000, and that the number of districts doing that fell from 23 to 14. Now, when we actually go into the data and kind of say, well, what are people spending on? And I hope you guys can see this. I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger. So this is the actual report. And it kind of looks like that, in case anyone's wondering what it looks like. I I basically copy and paste the reports into one really big Excel file. And then I do a pivot table on it just to kind of get an idea of what's going on. So the things that people were curriculum, it's like that. And then I'm going to switch over to the grade level view here. So this is basically saying that most of these substantially similar courses were being purchased for students in grades K through 8. I mean, obviously there's some overlap here. You know, K through 5 is in there. But if you look at, for example, high school, courses, which, some would fall in there, some would fall in there, and some would fall in there. It's a much smaller activity level. So this is mostly, K through 8 and, music and PE. And if you're doing, substantially similar stuff in your district, you're probably looking at this and going, yep, I knew that. Why is he telling me something I already knew? But just thought that, you guys would find it interesting to know what's going on kind of statewide.
Carl, could I pop a question in here?
Yeah, absolutely.
What about expenses for supplies, books, or curriculum? Do those fall under substantially similar?
Yeah, that is a great question. So substantially similar really just covers experiences or services. So when you're talking about buying a thing, a book, or even access to online content, which is something that's fairly commonly done, that's not what we're talking about here. We're really talking about activities and experiences and services, and not things. So I hope that's kind of a clear distinction. If you ever have any questions about, is a thing going to be subject to substantially similar or not, feel free to ask us, and we can definitely provide some clarification on that one. Okay, so I also want to point out that substantially similar does kind of extend to a district's contractors. So if you're a district that has contracted out an ALE program, could be that you're partnering with another school district to do it, could be that you've partnered with a nonprofit company or a for-profit company, the school district's still on the hook for ensuring that their contractor complies with this particular rule. So just want to point that out if anyone's in that particular situation. Okay, so what does the rule actually say here? We've kind of talked about the what, right? So it's things that are purchased or contracted and their experiences and services. So what the rule actually says is districts are prohibited from purchasing or contracting for ALE services or experiences unless a substantially similar service or experience is made available to the students in the district's regular education program. So if you're buying something for ALE, there needs to be something that is substantially similar to that available in the regular education program. And so I have this handy-dandy link right here. I'm going to click, and it is going to take us to the definition of substantially similar experiences or services. This is in section 3K of the rules. This is also one of the sections that was kind of rearranged when we redid the rules last, I guess, August, September or so. So it used to be in 3I. No, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. It used to be somewhere else, and now it's in 3K. I don't remember where it was before. But just in case you're kind of confused by the moving around, that's what happened. So what it says here is that for each purchased or contracted, course or lesson or trip or whatever the activity is, there needs to be an identical or similar experience, service, or activity made available to students enrolled in the regular education program, and then we lay out a 5-part test for that. The first part is it has to be at a similar grade level. So this doesn't mean an identical grade level. So it's not like third grade. It's more like if it's a course for a third grader, by the similar grade level, we would consider like elementary to be a similar grade level. Okay, and middle school, high school. So don't slice that one too narrowly. There is some wiggle room there. The next test is at a similar level of frequency, intensity, or duration. And this also includes this question of individual versus group instruction. So, one of the concerns that comes up is, are individual, music lessons the same as the school offering like a band class or something like that? And so what this says is it needs to be at a similar level of frequency, intensity, duration, which is also to say that if the school offers in the regular education program a one-day, kung fu class, that's a little different than a student who's involved in a year-long kung fu class where the student meets, weekly. So that's kind of an extreme example, kind of a weekly activity that goes on for a year versus a 1-hour, demonstration. So just kind of pointing that out as things that are kind of obviously not the same. The third one here is around a similar level of cost to the student. And one of the interesting things is this doesn't say a similar level of cost to the district. This is to the students. So if you make students in the regular education program pay for example, going on a field trip or something like that, then we would expect that same cost to be applied to students going on that same field trip from the ALE program. And I'm thinking about, like, we just filled out a field trip form for my kid today and have to attach a check for that. So that's something that's obviously real common, but we definitely see ALE programs trying to pay for field trips there, and so have to keep that test in mind. Then the next two are that it needs to be in accordance with the district adopted content standards or state defined grade level standards. And then supervise, monitor, assess, evaluate, documented by a certificated teacher. You guys have seen that line probably over and over again throughout the ALE in rules. And these two really kind of highlight the connection up here with the student learning plan. So, one of the things that we saw before the substantially similar rule came into place a lot is that an ALE program would be paying for service or experience but not including it on the student learning plan. And that's just not something that's going to fly, basically. If you're going to pay for a service or experience for a student, it really needs to be related to something on the student learning plan. And if it's on the learning plan, it's going to need to be, aligned, state standards or obviously the, district standards there. And it's going to need to be supervised, monitored, assessed, and evaluated by a cert teacher. Okay, it looks like we've had a question come in. And I'm going to try to read, so give me just a sec. Okay, that's one I think. So this is from actually Cheryl Fresher at State Auditor's Office, and I'm going to go ahead and read what she said. So she said, we have found the confusion in districts is with the made available to students in the district's regular education program. School districts believe that the service provided in ALE must be made available to regular students. The auditor understanding is the service must be made available to regular students, and then it may be paid for as a substantially similar experience for an ALE student. Okay, so I think, and I'm almost tempted. I'm almost tempted just to open Cheryl's mic and let her say a little bit more about that. So I'm going to unmute Cheryl. Are you there?
Hang on.
Okay.
Oh. Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
The confusion that when we are looking at substantial...
And now we can't hear you.
Oh.
You were fine and then not fine.
Okay, how about now?
That's better.
Okay. The confusion that we have encountered when looking at substantially similar in school districts is many districts, when they read that rule, they think that the experience needs to be offered first in ALE and made available to the regular students versus when we look at substantially similar, we're looking to see, are you offering that substantially similar experience to your students in the traditional school? If yes, then you can pay for that substantially similar service for the ALE students. Is that confusing, or is that clarified a little bit? They're looking at, what we're seeing is they're looking at, okay, we have this ALE program and we're offering it to ALE kids and paying for it, and if traditional students want to take it, they can, but otherwise it's not available in their brick-and-mortar school.
Yeah, so that's a really great clarification. And what we've said from the get-go, and I think it's on this page in the FAQs. Yeah, here it is. So can a student who's enrolled in the regular instructional program just take that course through ALE, and therefore it's available? And the answer is no. So here's an example. If you're paying for horseback riding lessons for your ALE students, then we would expect there to be a horseback riding program available to the regular instructional students as well, and not just something that says, well, the regular kids can enroll in the ALE program to access the horseback riding. So I hope that made sense. If not, we will try to clarify that. So thanks for that, Cheryl, and we'll keep going. I do see another questions come in, so
okay.
Yep, I will copy this to the chat question. This one basically says, ALE kids attend an educational program at a local museum or theater, and it is in their WSLP. The ALE teacher is evaluating, documenting, assessing, and monitoring. If he or she does not attend the seminar or program at the museum or theater, does that nix it as substantially similar, since they are technically not there at the actual event to supervise?
Not necessarily, no. And that's a question that's actually, I think, going to wander over into our HQT FAQs, because we have some information there about what roles the CERT teacher is going to play when there is a non-CERT. So I'm assuming that the contractor, in this case the museum, is not providing a certificated teacher. So there's a non-CERT that's providing instructional support services, and we have some pretty specific guidance about working under the direct supervision of that teacher and frequent contact and so forth. So that would be, I think, where to look to answer that question. What I wanted to do next is we have a little checklist, and I'm going to bring up this checklist. It's a Word doc, and you can download this. And you know, actually, one of the things I've said is if you fill out this checklist for each thing that you're contracting for, and you think you have a real strong case, I think this is great, you know, documentation to show to the state auditors in terms of your thought process of how a thing is or isn't substantially similar. So if there are any sort of, you know, questions going through this exercise, I think is going to put you in a good place. And our friends from SAO can feel free to disagree with me on that if they want to. But I think at the very least, going through this exercise helps you understand. So what I'm wondering is there anyone out there that has an example of a thing that they have contracted for or purchased that they're feeling pretty confident is substantially similar? This is probably not the time to do something that you think is kind of borderline or you're not sure about, but you know, I'm looking for a real-world example that we can maybe talk through. If you have something, go ahead and either raise your hand or type it into the question window. And if you raise your hand, I'll unmute you and you can tell us about it. So anyone want to volunteer? There's a part of me that wants to be the mean teacher and just call on somebody, but I don't think I'm going to do that. All right, well, hands are not leaping up here. So I guess we'll come up with a made-up one. So we'll say that we are contracting with the local YMCA for a PE course. Okay, that's probably not enough detail actually. So if you're really filling this out, you know, you're going to want to say it's a, you know, K through 5 PE course for, you know, 10 students or something like that. And you're probably going to want to go into more detail about kind of what that course actually covers. I don't have a good enough imagination to do that on the fly, so I'm not going to. And so the first kind of obvious question is this something that A, is a course, lesson, trip, other service or activity, and B, is it contracted or purchased? And if the answer is no here, then it doesn't sound like you need to go any farther. But in this case, we're going to say the answer is yes. And then it says, okay, now think about what's the substantially similar experience, service, or activity that's made available to students in the district's regular instructional program. And so, you know, we're going to say students in the district, actually we're going to say K-5 students in the district have PE class at least once a week. And then with the two services in mind, the one that you're contracting for and then the one that's occurring in the regular instructional program, then we're going to go through these questions. Now, you're going to know these first 5 questions because lo and behold, they are cribbed from this section of the rule. Okay, we wrapped a few more words around them, but what's happening here is it's those 5 things. So is this at the the first one's around grade level. Is it at either the same grade level or close? So we're dealing with K5 here, K5 here. Yes, both are for K5 students. Is it the similar level of frequency, intensity, duration, including consideration of individual versus group instruction? So I'm going to say yes here because say the contracted service is a group class for all 10 students, and then contracted service meets once a week, and we'll say the same as the district's PE program. So just trying to lay out that these are the same here. Are identical or similar experiences available at the same level of cost? And so again, we're going to say yes. There is no charge to students for either experience. So in this case, we probably wouldn't want you to be charging students for a PE class in either the ALE program or in the regular instructional program. And then, is this class aligned to the standards? And so we're going to say yes. And you may put some details in here about the standards. Which ones in particular is this class going to hit, et cetera, et cetera. And then the question about the cert teacher. And so here you would say like ALE course is supervised, monitored, assessed. I'm not going to type all this. I'm a little too lazy to type it all out. But if you were doing this for real, you would probably want to type it all out. So you'd say ALE courses supervised, monitored, assessed, evaluated, documented by a certificated teacher. So those are the kind of 5 that are in the rules. On page 2, we've added a number of other kind of guiding questions. And some of these are kind of how well this fits into ALE. And some of these are kind of the best, I shouldn't even say best practices, but kind of the accepted contracting practices that you're going to want to follow whenever you're contracting out like this. And so is this thing on the student learning plan? As I said before, if you're buying something and it's not on a learning plan, that's a huge red flag here. So that's just not something that should be happening. Does the experience or service or activity satisfy all the program requirements and the implementation requirements? And so this is kind of, is there anything about this that would get you sideways with the ALE rules? And so we're going to say, yeah, this is just going to follow all the ALE rules. We're fine here. And then this is a bit interesting. So some of these activities are going to be kind of standalone courses. So we're going to contract out for a math course. We're going to contract out for an entire PE course, something like that. In other cases, they're going to be more discrete, experiences. As a part of a science course, we're contracting with someone to come in and do a science lab demonstration, or we are paying for a field trip that is a part of the science course, things like that. And And so this is just kind of making sure if it's a full course thing, it's going to meet all the requirements. Is this activity reasonable and necessary for the successful completion of the course objectives? So this is just kind of another check for you to say, well, is this something that is actually a thing the student needs to do, or is this something we're doing for fun? Because I think that's another red flag if you start throwing things in there that are just more like entertainment instead of things that are actually on the student learning plan and aligned to course objectives. Is this the least cost option for the district that will still enable the student to successfully complete the course? So are there ways to do this cheaper, or is this actually kind of the best deal that the district can get? Does the purchasing adhere to the district's purchasing and contracting policies and procedures? And so we have it other places in the ALE rules that in ALE programs you should follow the district's kind of standard contracting process and standard purchasing process. I think one of the areas where ALE programs got a little bit sideways a few years ago was in essentially doing things like reimbursing parents for purchases, and that's obviously something that doesn't happen in the kind of regular instructional program. That's oftentimes kind of outside of the normal process for buying things. So what we're saying here is follow those kind of normal normal processes. There are state contract requirements and so forth, and we've thrown some RCWs in there. So if that applies, then you're going to want to check that out. Just kind of another check: is this a responsible use of public dollars? And then this is an interesting one. So are there similar activities in the regular instructional program that are subject to a district fee schedule? So it's real common for obviously school districts to have kind of fee schedules, even things like lab fees. So if you're taking a lab science course, there may be a lab fee associated with that. If you're taking an ALE lab science course, there could certainly be a lab fee associated with that. So going back to that question of, is it at a similar level of cost to the student, this is where having it on that district fee schedule is going to help a lot. And then again, this is something that looks a lot like this first one. It isn't on the student learning plan, but is this specifically identified that like this is a contracted or purchased thing? Is that identified on the student learning plan? So the idea here is, you fill out this thing. If all the answers are yes, you're probably in good shape. I don't think it's kind of a magic, get out of jail free card. But if you fill this out and you have a good case for all these items, I think you're in good shape. If you find yourself with some no's here, then I think you need to rethink, is this something that we really want to buy, or are there other alternatives? Are there other ways that we can get the job done here? Okay, so that's the checklist. I've seen a question come in. What do we got, Susan? Susan may have stepped away from the mic. So I'm going to read it.
No, I just forgot to
okay.
unmute my microphone.
Oh,
sorry.
That's what it was. Okay.
All righty, this is a
follow. I put you to sleep.
No.
Oh, okay.
Then you would have heard my snoring on the over the mic.
Right. Okay.
All righty, so this is a follow-up to the museum theater question.
Yeah.
The paid certificated ALE teacher does not attend the educational experience. 3 to 5 ALE students attend, as does 1 or more regular classroom students. The ALE parent is the one who attends the event with the student. The student and parent then talk about the experience at the monthly progress review meeting. Would you consider that substantially similar? And then here's a little more follow-up information on this. Since many YMCA PE courses are taught by non-certificated teachers, I'd assume that we'd check no on the final guiding question at that point. We're done. No need to go to the second page as it's not considered substantially similar. Actually, so there's two different questions there.
Yeah, those are two different questions. I'm going to take the second one first. So let's not forget that I was making up this example. And in my magic example here, there was a certificated teacher that was teaching this course. Clearly, I don't spend enough time at the YMCA to know whether they do or do not have cert teachers. But in my example, I was looking for something that that would be considered substantially similar. So let me just go on record and saying that my example is entirely fictional, and it was meant to be something that we could check, yes on. In reality, if you are purchasing, YMCAP courses, you may not be able to check, the yes on all of these, and so that very well may be an issue. On the other one,
so the point of, yes, if you get a no and there's no certificated teacher, yes, he is correct. There's no reason to go on with the checklist because that's a major factor there.
Yeah, if you have a no on any one of these initial 5, or even this one up here, just stop. Basically, I mean, unless you can come up with a really good case for why, these are yeses, there's really no point to go into page 2. The other one gets a little complicated. So I've already said that I don't want to kind of give a yes or no on is that or isn't it substantially similar. But I think one of the challenges we have here, and it's not really a substantially similar challenge as much as it is around this question of what's the role of the teacher, kind of how are they, what role are they playing here? And so, again, it goes back to those questions that I pulled up on the HQT page to talk about how the teacher is going to be, monitoring and supervising and working with the non-cert. So it may or may not be okay. It depends a lot on kind of what that looks like. And then I think the other thing that's a little bit of a red flag on that is this idea that that at least one of the students from the regular instructional program attends this same experience. So the question I would have is, it goes back to this first, the first test here, how is that, available? Because we've said that enrolling the regular instructional student into the ALE program doesn't make it substantially similar. It needs to be, there needs to be a thing that's available to the regular instructional program, already, and it's not, you can't just enroll kids in and make that work. So I see a couple of kind of, potential red flags there that kind of may or may not make this into something that is substantially similar, but just, things for you to kind of think through and figure out on your own. At this point, I want to turn it over to Dale Sando from the State Auditor's Office and let him tell us a little bit about what SAO's experience has been doing substantially similar audits. Take it away, Dale.
Okay. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Carl said, we the way we conducted the audit was we obtained the big report that he had consolidated from all of the districts, and it was about $4.6 million in spending. When we actually got around to conducting our audits, we decided to limit it to just the districts that spent over $100,000. That was only 12 of the districts, but that made up 80% of that $4.6 million, or about $3.7 million we ended up auditing. The two biggest areas, as Carl already indicated, that spending was made for were in the areas of music and PE or health. The average cost statewide per student per activity was about $225, but we did note that one district spent about $6,300 apiece for 2 students on piano lessons. Kind of brings up the question on his checklist about, is it reasonable? The way we proceeded on the audit is we took all of the line items that each district had provided to OSPI. We put in from his checklist the 5, we actually used 6 questions. You know, as far as like at a similar grade level, is it offered to students in the regular program at a similar cost and supervised, monitored, etc., by a certificated instructor, and we sent that out to the 12 districts. Most of the districts answered yes to every question, and 2 or 3 districts really put some thought into it, and they answered no to a substantial number of line items. And then when we got the spreadsheets back, we'd take a look at the responses, and if there was anything that seemed to be popping out at us that we needed to do some follow-up questions on, we'd call the district or email some more questions and go over it some more. Results, we ended up questioning about $1.5 million of the $3.7 million that we audited. That's about 42% of what we looked at. For the 12 districts that we audited, the percent questioned ranged from 0% in, I believe, 3 districts to 98% at 1 district. The primary reasons for the question costs, number 1, the activities were just not offered to students in regular schools. We did note that often that might occur in a small district that has a relatively large proportion of out-of-district students. And we did note that 5 of the programs that we audited had over 95% non-resident enrollment. And the small district might not have that capability to offer an activity that they're offering to the non-resident students within their own geographic area. One example, a district lost an instructor for stringed instruments when he moved out of the area. They could no longer offer that to their own students. Another example that we ran across, the district did try to offer a class to its own students. It was on the schedule for students to register for, but they didn't get enough student interest in the regular school to actually provide it to those students. And as Cheryl was talking about earlier, some said that the ALE courses are open to everybody, so it's made available, but that's one of the methods that's specifically not allowable. Another area that really caused some problems was if the district told us that certificated staff did not interface with the CBI's community-based instructors on at least a monthly basis. In our opinion, since monthly progress reviews are required, we would anticipate that there would be at a minimum that amount of contact. And then one of the other ones that we ran across that was fairly common was participation costs to students in the regular schools, but not in the ALE. And an example on that would be one district was paying $75 per regular student to participate in activities, but we noticed that driver's education, for example, the full cost of $475 was being picked up for the ALE students. And another district was charging consumables fees to districts in some classes, but not to students in the ALE courses. So what we really saw, I guess if we were trying to get down to commonalities of districts that had high errors, first and foremost would be they didn't provide oversight of the community-based instructors at least monthly, and they didn't provide a building within their own district for the CBIs to actually provide the instruction. We did look at a couple of parent partner programs where the students all come to the district and kind of participate there, and that's where all the CPIs were also coming. And it's a bit easier to see how monitoring is occurring of those community-based instructors when they are on site. So I guess our recommendation coming out of the audit would be use Carl's checklist he's got on his website. That should be able to, if you have enough information to enter that to support your expenditures, be able to clear up whether or not it's allowable. That's it.
Great. Thanks a lot, Dale.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to type them into the window. If not, I think we're kind of on the home stretch here.
Carl, I have a question. This is Susan.
You know, I didn't. Yeah.
So just to follow up with Dale. Dale, you mentioned when you looked at consumables. So would that be considered supplies? And so as far as the dollars that were spent on that, that's not looked at, but you were looking just at the practice, that as consistency in practice for charging, since consumables really wouldn't fall under what we're monitoring for substantially similar experiences and services. I get a question on supplies and things every now and then from school, so I'm just a little confused on that one.
Consumables, the districts where that came up it was listed as a fee. Fee for consumables, fee for activities, and we were trying to make sure that we were consistent in what if we questioned it in one district, we were going to question it in another. That when it goes through audit resolution, I'm sure there'll be some conversation between resolution and the digital learning department, clarifying how they're going to handle that. So it is kind of a complicated question.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. So to kind of wrap up, one of the things I wanted to mention was that there were a couple of changes made to the substantially similar rule when we when we made the ALE rule changes this past August or so, and they were partially a result of 5946 passing, but they didn't really kind of change the character of the rule. They were basically clarifications around these exemptions here. So making sure that everybody knows that contracting with district employees is not the contracting that Substantially Similar is talking about. And then also adding this requirement, or sorry, this exemption here, that it's actually, it's not really an exemption, it's just saying that this rule doesn't require districts to to offer everything. Like, I'm say this differently. It's not like the ALE program and the regular instructional program have to be identical. Okay, so it's not like you have to offer everything to both. It's just saying that if you're contracting or purchasing a service or experience for ALE, it needs to be available to students in the district's regular instructional program. So, as I look at those, those changes, they feel just basically like clarifications, not really adjusting kind of the overall point of the rule. So, with that, I see we are closing in on 10:30, and we do like to keep these to an hour. I know you guys are all busy and have plenty of other things to do other than listen to us go on and on about Substantially Similar. So at this point, I think we will say thank you and goodbye, and please feel free to be in touch, and I will throw up contact information again. Feel free to be in touch if you have any questions about Substantially Similar or about teacher supervision of non-certificated staff or any of this stuff. We will help you think it through. So thanks a lot for attending, and hope to see you next month.